But we will start. We'll probably have around 40, 45 minutes to talk and discuss the questions that I mentioned before, and we'll then take questions from the audience. Maybe we'll dive deeper in some of the topics that would be interesting to people.
Sounds good.
Cool. Anything you need to say or do to kind of become more present, become more?
I'm good. Meditation's part of my morning routine, although nowadays I don't have a very formal one. I do what I call a just-in-time meditation.
Okay. Awesome.
I can talk more about that if anybody's interested.
Yeah.
But ready to keep going.
Cool. So, George, thanks first of all for connecting that early in your day and sharing your experience. I think that's going to be useful and very valuable for people because you're both a leader and you are an experienced coach as well. So there's a good kind of mixture in this section to share from. So would you be willing to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I struggled for a while with this whole notion of being multi-passionate. You know, if you've never heard the word, it's somebody who has many interests and excels in a lot of them, and on the surface might appear flaky, like you cannot commit to one thing. Until very recently, I realized that we're all to some degree multi-passionate, but the culture, well, first of all, there's value in focusing on one thing and becoming good at it, right? And there's also the danger of when you have multiple passions and you kind of switch between them back and forth. At some point, it might become a crutch. It allows you to say to yourself, as soon as you get to the hard parts of a thing that you're pursuing, right, you become pretty good, pretty fast, and that's when all the challenges start, right? If you have this idea that you're a multi-passionate person, at that point you can say, oh, okay, I got lost interest with this thing, I'm going to move on to the next thing, right? So it's very important to not fall into that trap, but also allow yourself to be, express different interests, pursue different interests in life. So I've tried many things in life. I started as a early on in my life. Most of my family thought that I'm gonna be a psychologist or therapist. And then in 1986, the movie Short Circuit came out, and I just got seduced by computers. I thought computers and robots were the coolest thing in the world, Only much later I realized that the movie was about what it means to be conscious, what it means to be, alive. So it kind of brought me the full circle, and now that's why I'm a coach now. But I spent quite a few years, more than 2 decades in tech. I started as a software engineer, climbed through the ranks. Boatzilla is my third company. So I've done a little bit of everything in tech. I was in virtualization. I was in storage. SurveyMonkey was the most recent big company I worked at. So I kind of don't have necessarily a label for myself. I have spent quite a bit of time in tech, and now I'm pursuing a coaching career / running my own company. But I hope it in a nutshell explains where I'm coming from.
So how did you kind of make this full circle and turn back to?
I love this exercise. I sometimes ask my clients to do it. Ask 10 to 20 people to describe what you're good at that other people might struggle with. So kind of your natural strengths. And I did that exercise myself a couple of years ago, and a lot of people came back with, I have a natural talent for seeing the truth behind what's being said, and guiding people towards finding a solution to their problem without telling them what to do. And that's when it really clicked for me. I always felt like I wanted to help people somehow.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I went to transition to a leadership position from a software engineer. I wanted to help people. But when I've heard that feedback, it really clicked to me that this is what I'm just naturally good at. And when you're naturally good at something, you don't necessarily take it seriously very often. You dismiss it as something, well, it's just something I do, right? It just works out. And because I didn't put a lot of effort into it, I didn't go to college to get a degree, I didn't spend years and years and years honing this one thing, it doesn't feel like a valid career choice, right?
Yeah.
But the lights came on, and I realized that not only this is something I'm passionate at, but it's also something that I'm good at. And that's what brought me to coaching.
So it seems like you really started coaching even more professionally.
Right, in my leadership, and I guess we're going to talk about that a little bit today. For me, leadership management is 80% about coaching and 20% about other things.
So it kind of naturally leads me to the next question. What's coaching for you? What's your definition?
Right. It's interesting for me to see the debate around this in the coaching community as well as outside. People try to put crisp lines between consulting, which is basically giving people a fish, right? Mm-hmm. Telling them what to do, and sometimes even doing that for them. And coaching is a process of co-creating, is drawing out what the other person already knows, reflecting back to them what they cannot see, basically making the invisible visible to them. Mm-hmm. And there's of course there's therapy, which we don't have to go into. I feel that it's also based on my experience that there's always, by necessity, a combination of coaching and consulting in any coaching relationship, in any relationship. When you try and go to extremes, not to tell people what you know, and instead turn it into a question, or try to draw it out of people, it might sound insincere. Like you're trying to say something, you're trying to give advice, but you wrap it into a question. You hide it behind a question. Mm-hmm. And I went on a little bit of a tangent, but coming back, my definition of coaching is not necessarily this crisp separation of helping people to achieve their goals and not pushing them necessarily in any one direction. I believe that coaching absolutely does include coach's philosophy. It must, because the coach there's a deep why and deep reason behind why a coach went into a particular field, right? Let's take a business coach, for example. They have specific ideas about what it means for a business to be successful, what it means to run a successful business. When people come to them for help, they're looking for that sort of insight, as well as helping the coachee to figure out their own blogs, right? Expand their own horizons. So for the leadership coach, very similarly, I have my own leadership philosophy, and it has to come out in my conversations with my clients. And coming back, and I'm going to try and now wrap it into a definition. So I think coaching is absolutely a co-creating experience when you're trying the client to understand their own self-imposed limits and expand those limits or remove those limits. And because it's a co-creating, you also share your own values and your own views on the subject with the client. Right. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I went around this subject a little bit.
It's hard sometimes to put some ideas into words, and
yeah,
coaching is in many cases about how you show up as a person, and it's easier to describe it in words. And if you take the ICF definition, it doesn't really say anything until you experience the process.
Yeah, I feel there's a value in ICF definition in the sense that it describes what the pure coaching process is.
Mm-hmm.
But human relationships are never black and white, and they're don't ever have this crisp line between here I'm a coach and here I give you an advice. Mm-hmm. It goes back and forth, and it's important to be able to integrate it and have a clear understanding of.
Let's talk about this thing. You are a coach who works with clients as a pure coach. And you're also a leader, you're also a founder. So how do you approach those different contexts as a coach?
I think maybe this will also help to explain or crystallize the definition of what coaching means for me. I think at the core of it for me is the curiosity. Mm-hmm. The curiosity is how you approach any situation in life. It's very natural for humans to react with skepticism or there's a whole range of emotions, right? That's related to skepticism. It could be denial. When you come across something that does not match your worldview or doesn't agree with what you know. Curiosity is a very natural antidote to that. Curiosity allows you to, instead of saying this is bullshit, it allows you to ask a question: what if it's not? What can I learn here? What might I not know about this? And this, for me, is the coaching process. First of all, it starts with me. This is how I approach any client and employee. When they come to me with a problem, I become extremely curious. What is it that might be holding them back? Or what is it that I think is a limitation that could in fact be a strength? Mm-hmm. So it starts with me, and then as a coach in this relationship, be it with a client or with an employee, I want to try and instill that same frame of mind into them as well. Mm-hmm. Become curious about the problem rather than just deny it. And I forgot who said that. I'm sure someone famous. You learn as long as you don't start to blame. As soon as you start to blame your failures on somebody else, mm-hmm. that's where the learning stops. But that's where the growth stops. So as long as you keep pursuing you keep digging deeper and deeper out of curiosity, I think that's the essence of the coaching relationship. And it doesn't really matter whether it's with a client, with a paying client, or with your own employee.
So how do you do this? I mean, it's easy to tell people to be curious, but
Right.
how how you are becoming curious, and how you teach your people to become curious.
I think this is a perfect segue to what is the perfect coaching question. And there is no perfect coaching questions. You have to um, work with whatever shows up, right? Um, but there's a common theme to a lot of really good coaching questions, and that is what if. I love the questions that start with what if. Um, it allows the possibility. It's just some example that just came to mind. Say you think you have to go to college after high school, and you can't afford it. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They think they have to do something, and they don't see any way to pull it off. Right.
Mm-hmm.
A good question to ask in that particular situation would be, well, what if you don't have to go to college? It's a very simple question. It sounds silly, right? To even ask that question when they come to you and say, I have to go to college and I cannot figure out how to do it, right? But it unblocks, it opens, it forces the doors open, and it forces people to come out of this box and consider other things. So first of all, like I said previously, I start with myself. I become very curious about any situation I'm in, any conversation I'm in. And then by example, that also teaches people that approach. I very specifically also talk about the value of curiosity with people I coach, and how it's a perfect antidote to a lot of emotions. And sometimes situations present when you can use it as an example. With engineers in particular, I think engineers are trained by trade, by virtue of doing their work well every single day. They're trained to um, look for corner cases and examine everything with with the idea of disproving it. Right? You try to find a fault with a solution. Where is it gonna fail? What are all the bugs that I can find before I even start writing? So you look for faults, you look for this is bullshit moments, and it trains you to be skeptical. Um, it trains you to be skeptical with code, and then you come home and you extend that same thinking to everything else. So with engineers, I very often talk about replacing that skepticism with curiosity. When you use curiosity instead of skepticism, when you come across something that looks like a wall, you don't treat it like a wall. You think, okay, what if it's not a wall? Is there a door? Can I climb over? What's to the left of the wall? What's to the right of the wall? So it allows you to not get stuck. Yeah. But whereas with skepticism, you usually start with the goal in mind of finding fault with something, right? And with skepticism, you keep banging your head against that wall, trying to find a fault, or maybe you even take it as a proof that it might be a dead end, right? There's the wall, therefore this is a dead end. So to answer your question now more directly, it's using myself as an example of somebody who, through curiosity, finds solutions in dead end situations. And speaking about this more directly, if you check my Instagram or LinkedIn, you'll find me talk about curiosity a lot. And curiosity is one of two pillars of my coaching philosophy as well.
What's the second one?
The curiosity is the second one. The first one is mindfulness or awareness. Everything starts with awareness. Of course, you can send people go and learn meditation. for a few years, and that's going to take time. My role as a coach is to aid that awareness by reflecting back what I see in my clients and my employees.
I also often feel that a lot of coaching work that you do is almost kind of spiritual, because you let people touch something really deeply meaningful and really valuable. And this is always
Right.
brings some almost spiritual experience, I would say.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think about it a lot. And spiritual, I would not necessarily use that word with the clients, but I do understand what you mean. I try to avoid using words like mindfulness and meditation with clients as well, because people tend to react to it in a particular way, because I think there's a perception that meditation is a semi-religious ritual, and you need to go into the mountains of Oregon for a few years with a guru in order to, which is not true at all. But yes, any process of transformation, especially fast transformation that you expect from a good coaching session, could be filled with a lot of emotions, and therefore it might feel very, very deep and spiritual.
Yeah. Maybe to get into kind of more practical things about coaching, what advice you would give to managers, to leaders who just start exploring coaching skills, just start trying coaching skills in the workplace?
I think, like with leadership, I think the best advice is to start with yourself. The best coaches are coaches who have done a lot of work on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot take a client deeper than a client or an employee, deeper than you have been willing to go yourself. So if you want to start down that path, find a good coach for yourself and go through the process, understand what it feels to have a transformational coaching experience, and that will make you a better coach yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are a few books that could be recommended. The one that comes to mind right now is The Coaching Habit, and a lot of it is about asking good questions, which in turn is a lot about curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Simon Sinek is a good author to read. Not necessarily about coaching specifically, but he's a big voice in I think I'm gonna have to explain first what I'm trying to say. It sort of comes back to skepticism versus curiosity. Simon puts it approaches it from a different angle. He talks a lot about leadership. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he wrote a book.
The surface level.
Leaders Eat Last, Start With Why. Most recent of his books is the title escapes you, but not important. I think where a lot of learning for people happen is when we're faced with a contradiction of some sort. We have many words for it: dilemma or contradiction, or the technical term for it is codependent pairs, or what's the other term? A paradox is another term. Basically, anywhere where you can make two seemingly true but contradictory statements is is where a lot of learning happens. It basically a signal to yourself that there's something that you don't understand about this particular reality. You might be the visual that I like. Two people arguing whether it's a circle or a square,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out they're looking at a cylinder, but they're thinking two-dimensionally. So a paradox is kind of that situation when you're looking at whatever you're looking two-dimensionally from two different angles, and you're seeing two seemingly contradictory things. I think Simon brings this third dimension to a lot of the conversations, specifically about leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the ability to step up to one dimension above the problem is a very fundamental coaching skill, to be able to look at the problem through your own eyes, through the eyes of your client or your employee. And if they're contradictory, be able to step above that and see how both of them could be true at the same time. Find that unifying thing, the truth, a unifying reality where both could be true. Whereas to contrast it with consulting, in consulting, it would be, no, it's not a square, it's a it's a circle, and this is why, right?
Yeah, and I think it's probably what coaches usually do. They create the space where this contradiction could be tolerated for more time than we usually do it, because usually we dismiss the opposite view. And by in a space where this contradiction could be laid out and considered from different sides, like you mentioned, the curiosity, being curious about different polarities.
Polarity, yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
yeah. There's a good book about polarity management.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it also resonates with, I think, Robert Keegan, who's a developmental psychologist. He talks about the levels of cognitive complexity. Basically, by holding these opposite views, you develop a new level of maturity.
Right. Yeah. That ties it all back to awareness, mindfulness, and awareness. Yeah. But it's a very for those who's watching this video and have kids, I think a good parallel is when you have kids, it does not necessarily make you a better human, right? It doesn't immediately make you more tolerant, understand what unconditional love is, right? But it creates this environment where you can develop all of that. Coaching relationship and coaching mindset creates that's very similar environment that allows you to examine your own preconceptions and allows you to grow personally as well as help the clients. I think the biggest the dirtiest secret of coaching is that you've kind of couple of steps ahead of your client.
Mm-hmm.
You're not this all-knowing guru that has answers to all the possible questions that the client can have. You just traveled this path a couple of days before them, and that's what allows you to guide them on this path. Right?
Yeah. And my first coaching teacher said once that you need to love your clients. If you don't really enjoy them and enjoy the company, and if you don't appreciate them as people, probably you won't be that helpful to them.
Absolutely agree, and this is true of leadership as well. That's my leadership coaching philosophy is all about unconditionally appreciating the people, be deeply interested in them as people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which a lot of techies find really counterintuitive because they come at this from very technical, very mechanical point of view. Leadership is, here's the definition, and that's what you do, and it's
Building,
almost
managing the org structure and so on.
right. And the fact that we still use, in 21st century, we still use the title manager for leadership is also, I think, not helping the situation. It's less about managing. I've heard the term of servant leader many times, and I've been meaning to dig deeper and see. I mean, on the surface, it's clear what it means, right? But I want to check out what this whole movement is about, and I recommend any leader to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's one of the topics that I and another coach here in Prague, we wanted to do some presentation on this topic. So it's kind of very curious, and I'm interested in this conversation. Maybe a few things that I wanted to explore so that make it for other people as well useful. I'm just wonder how did you go about your development as a coach? So did you take any courses, any books, any recommendations to people who want to follow?
Yeah. Because of what I said, because of my multi-passionate nature and the fact that psychology was always my interest on the background, I would not necessarily recommend my path as the path. Mm-hmm. For example, when I was in college, I became very interested in NLP, and I have taken a few classes, even though I was getting an engineering degree. I have a few certifications, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. So yeah, as a coach, you want to learn as many tools as you possibly can. But I'm also a professional coach, so I think I might be doing a lot more than a manager should. With my work with technical leaders, I would usually recommend a book or two and just adopting a general mindset of curiosity, basically coming back to the same pillar over and over again. I think that's a really good starting point. And I really mean it as a starting point. I think people often underestimate what the right mindset, the importance of having the right mindset, and how much work can actually go into developing it. It's very easy to take a course online. You can find a course to learn acceptance and commitment therapy, for example, in a week and get a certificate online. But it doesn't necessarily make you a ACT practitioner, right? It has to start with the right mindset, and the mindset being unconditional appreciation of the people you work with, and the general curiosity.
Yeah. Like what's coming up for me is that even something like suggestion to be curious, sometimes people need to spend years to really embody this advice, because you can make a short course with one line, be curious.
Yeah.
And that, in a way, that's enough information already. But how you really implement it, how you be curious, that's
yeah. I think if you really want to become a coach leader, like I said earlier, you need to start with yourself. You need to find yourself a coach and really spend 6 months to a year to digging deep into yourself, going through this process yourself. Mm-hmm. And that will allow you to build this mindset. That will also allow you to when you're working with your employees, when you're coaching your employees, to be compassionate with what it takes. Is there's the curse of knowledge, right? When you have walked through experience already, it's really sometimes really difficult to look back and remember how much work it took for you to get where you are.
Yeah.
Working with the coach, I think, allows you to remember that a little better, especially if you approach it with the mindset of learning to become a coach yourself.
Yeah. One of the things that I observe in my clients is that as a byproduct of this work, they develop some kind of more awareness, more coach-like attitude, even by being on the receiving end, even if it's not immediately what they want to work on. Observe it.
Yeah, I find it extremely interesting. More than a few of my clients at the end of our relationship thought they wanted to go into coaching themselves. And as on one hand, it's really flattering. It means that I've been able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. On the other hand, I think people underestimate sometimes what it takes to make it a profession, something that you able to make a living from. Right?
But I guess it also attests to this craving of more meaningful interactions that we usually don't. And usually in coaching, you go deeper. You're present with another human being who's not judging you, who accepts you as you are. And this is, and I mean, I know that myself as a coach, I appreciate this part of the profession as well.
Absolutely, yeah. As I mentioned, the coaching creates this environment where it allows you to grow yourself and not just help other people. Yeah. And addictive, maybe not the right word, but it does. Once you get that rush, of going to the next level, you want to experience it again.
I think addictive is the right word. Yeah. Although it's not easy. Sometimes it can be.
It's painful, right? It's very often you uncover things about yourself you don't necessarily want to face.
Yeah.
Or you might want to change, but it takes a lot of work to get there. One of the certifications that I'm pursuing right now, learning a lot about, is tiny habits. I highly recommend to anybody, just go Google tiny habits, and there's a free 5-day course that you can take that gives you a kind of a taste. And there's the course is started by Stanford researcher B.J. Fogg. He also wrote a book by the same title, Tiny Habits. It's a game changer. And the reason I'm bringing it up is about the change. Sometimes change takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. And the traditional approach to this is habit formation is stick with it for 21 days, magical number, or 60 days or 90 days. And I can attest, you can do something for 90 days, check it off every single day for 3 months, and then be done with it and never come back to it. It does not, the frequency, the repetition does not form the habit. Emotions create habits, and this course, this book is a fantastic work. I think it's going to be a game changer. It's relatively new. I think he started teaching this in 2015. So it's not. He had been doing research for quite some time, and quite a few books use his research. Not the coaching habit. Which one? The Power of Habit is one. Atomic Habits is another one. All of them are derivative to some degree, but the source of all of that research is the B.J. Fogg and his Tiny Habits book. I want to take actually a minute and talk about it to kind of give people a taste of what it's all about. And the reason I'm so passionate about it, because I've talked about my two pillars, the awareness and curiosity, and those are very good high level ideas, but they're not telling you what to do. They're not being very specific about what do you do about your situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the other end of it, once you have the awareness of the problem, once you have been curious enough to dig deep and understand what potential next steps could be, what the desired change could be. On the other end of it is the behavior change. Any life situation you want to change, and the reason you came to a coach, at the end must culminate in some sort of behavior change, right? And this is why I'm so passionate about this book. This is going to sound almost too simplistic, but there's no repetition. And if you choose the right components for the process, habits sometimes take place within a day or two. And it all comes back to that all behavior happens when you have three components come together: motivation, your ability to perform a behavior, and the right prompt. Motivation is a fickle one, as you know. We can't rely on the motivation. But initially it has to be present in order for you to want to change, right? This wanting to change is the motivation we can assume. The ability and the prompt is where you have a lot of control over your behaviors. The ability, if we I'm going to change the language a little bit. Ability is a technical term, but basically what it means is an action easy to do or hard to do. And if you want to develop a habit, let's take flossing teeth, for example. As it turns out, 87% of human population do not floss. It's difficult, right? Especially when it's new behavior. Some people might have it's difficult. So in order for the habit to develop, you can make it extremely easy. You can say, I want to floss one tooth. That's all I want to do. It's going to take me not even 2 seconds. There is no reason not to do it, right? And the second component is the prompt. If you find the right prompt that is thematically related to the behavior you want to achieve, happens with the same frequency, happens in the same place and at the same time. Say brushing teeth. After I brush my teeth, I'm going to floss one tooth. All of a sudden, this behavior becomes a no-brainer. Next morning, you brush your teeth, floss one tooth, yay, high five, done, right? I think the breakthrough in this idea is something that I think intuitively already understand, a lot of us. But um, culturally, there's just this idea of go all in or go bust. You either do the thing perfectly or you don't do it all. It's not flossing one tooth is not necessarily something you want to talk to your friends about, right? Brag about. It's so tiny, it's almost embarrassing. And that's the key. Because it's so tiny, because it takes you less than 30 seconds, there is no objection. There's no resistance to it. And very quickly, you find yourself flossing the entire mouth. Because once you're already there, you might as well, do a few more teeth. Mm. And at that point, it's very important to remember that the habit is still flossing just one tooth. On the days when you don't have the time, when your kids are hanging off of both of your arms, asking for lunch, breakfast, whatever, flossing one tooth is still achieving the goal. And if you celebrate after doing that, and that's another key component of the tiny habits process. If you celebrate after flossing one tooth, you really ingrain this behavior into your mind. It becomes a no-brainer, so to speak, right? It becomes so automatic that it really becomes part of your life. So I would highly recommend people to check out the book and especially the 5-day course, free course. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of potential, I think, in it, in all sorts of coaching, but especially in the work environment.
You seem to be quite excited and passionate about
it. I am, yes. Mm-hmm. I'm about halfway through the course, coaching course, coaching certification. And it is already making huge impacts on my own life. As many of people who are listening to you know that the pandemic is still very much a thing in the United States. So the school started this week, and the kids are basically staying at home. We're doing a lot of homeschooling. Mm-hmm. And last spring, it was a disaster in my family. Neither my wife nor I were really excited about homeschooling kids. But this tiny habits process is just a miracle with my kids. All of a sudden, it's not such a big problem. So I do highly recommend it. And it's also funny that I think a lot of us understand this intuitively. I started running 13, 15 years ago. And the way I did, at the time I lived in a big apartment complex with a 24/7 gym, just one level below me. I could just jump on a elevator and be there in less than a minute. And I would just get on the treadmill, turn on the TV, and watch my favorite home improvement show for like 10 minutes. And the only reason I did that, not because I wanted to start running or get in shape, the only reason I did that is because at the time I was also starting another business, and I working late nights sometimes, and I just needed a break. I needed to go somewhere else and do something else rather than sitting in front of my computer. But I've done that enough times that it became a habit. And then at some point I thought, well, since I'm already on the treadmill, 10 minutes is kind of not enough. Let's put running shoes and spend an hour maybe on it. Mm-hmm. And before I knew it, I was running outside, and I lived in California at the time. So you can run all year round. It doesn't rain or never snows, and doesn't rain very often. Yeah. Start tiny. Start. And I was telling people, if you want to get into running, start so embarrassingly small and slow that, like, if you want to run outside, for example, run so slow that pedestrians pass you and you kind of almost feel embarrassed. If you want to run faster, don't. Still run very slow, and that's how you get into a new habit.
In a similar vein, I've heard a suggestion just as a habit to just put on your running shoes and tie the shoes. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, exactly. Same idea.
yeah.
Make something so tiny, there's no objection.
Mhm.
There's no resistance to do it.
Just mindful of time, George. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
let's see if anyone has any questions so that we can wrap up at the top of the call. So are there any questions from you guys?
Vitaly, I know you have a question. All right. You can find me online as George Sudarkoff. There's only one George Sudarkoff out there. Just Google my name. There's Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. My email is george@sudarkoff.com. If you have any questions, if you want to chat about anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out. As you might have noticed, I love to talk. Would be happy to talk about any.
Yeah, and I will put all your contacts in some meeting notes so that I can send it to participants. Anything particular you're up to and you want to share with the audience?
I went a little bit on a tangent about habits. So to bring it all back to the theme of this video, of this conversation, leadership and coaching, at the root of it, have the same idea, and that is serving other people. And I think if you keep that in mind, prioritize serving other people above all else, you will be successful in what you do.
It's a great pearl of wisdom to finish with. And I'm just curious, are there any other questions maybe you wanted me to ask but I didn't?
That's a good one. That's a good question about what questions we didn't talk about.
I have probably a gazillion more questions, but is there anything you wanted to share but I didn't ask about?
Nothing comes to mind right now. My initial one was, what's next? You adopt this coaching habits and you take maybe a couple of courses, and you feel like you're getting somewhere, and inevitably there's going to come a time when you reach the next plateau. And what is next in all of this? And I want to bring it back to the general awareness. I think the practice of developing your own awareness, developing your own mindfulness, is what allows you to grow pretty much continuously and indefinitely in any field. Coaching, leadership, does not matter. It's not necessarily a question, but that's something I think is worth digging much deeper into.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of supervision. I mean, managers do probably want to go to a coaching supervisor, but I guess some of the elements can be adopted of what supervisors
Yeah. I think mindfulness is such a difficult thing to recommend. It's very personal. There's a lot of misunderstanding around it. People think that meditation is like as I said before, is a almost semi-religious practice.
do. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of mystique about it. There's a lot of misunderstanding being propagated by popular literature and conversations online.
Mm-hmm.
That the goal of meditation is to quiet your mind, get rid of all the thought, right? Which could be nothing from the truth. And I think it contributes to a lot of people giving up. Because as soon as you sit down to meditate, the first thing you notice is that your mind is this crazy monkey that never shuts up. And so people think, oh, well, I can't meditate, and they give up.
Mm-hmm.
And noticing that crazy monkey is the whole point of meditation. Being able to separate the crazy monkey from the one who notices is the whole point of meditation. And doing this over and over and over is almost like a who said that? I don't remember who said that. It's almost like a bicep curl for your mind. It
Mm-hmm.
develops your ability to notice yourself being lost in a thought. When you're anxious about something, being able to separate that anxiety from, which in my mind, the way I like to frame it, that anxiety is your mind's opinion about the reality. It's not the reality itself. So being able to separate those opinions from the reality itself is such a tremendous skill, not just for leaders, not just for coaches, just generally in life. It improves your happiness, improves your life, but it certainly helps in leadership and coaching as well, because it comes back a little bit to asking the right questions. There is no that question that's gonna one-on-one question. I see the list of 50 best questions to ask in a one-on-one, and those are all great ideas to think about, but really it all comes down to being able to work with what shows up, and that ability comes from being aware, being able to separate the opinions from the reality, and basically it comes down to your own self-awareness practice. Does not, by the way, does not necessarily have to be meditation. To a lot of my clients, I recommend just journaling, just simple act of writing down your thoughts on paper for 10-15 minutes is all it takes sometimes to start.
Do you have any other recommendations, resources on mindfulness?
Breath work, any type of breath work, which includes yoga, but that doesn't necessarily have to be yoga, is another good way of getting into it. Yeah. If you do want to try meditation, the app that I recommend the most is Headspace. Mm-hmm. There are better apps if you want to go deeper, but Headspace is extremely accessible, and there's I think 10 lessons available for free if you want to check it out and see if it clicks, if it's something you want to do.
Okay. I think you had already some signal probably telling that the time is over. So I guess
people are waking up on this side of the world. Yeah.
Thanks, George. It was a pleasant conversation, and I would really love to continue. So maybe we can repeat it some.
Thank you. Absolutely. The feeling is mutual. Super. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, George. Bye. And have a nice day.
Bye, everybody.